Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session of our user conference. We're so thrilled to have you. I'm really excited about this session. Like just a little bit of housekeeping, like all these sessions, you're watching this on our conference website. And so you will see a Q&A section on the page. So if you have any questions for Dany, our wonderful speaker, please put them in there. She will monitor them. We will monitor them too. Also, I'm sure there'll be a way for you to contact Dany directly as well. So we're thrilled to have Dany Spencer presenting about Coach Chris. And so without further ado, Dany, we'd love to hear about your chatbot.
Great. Well, thanks so much. Today it's how do we further emotional intelligence skills with the help of a chatbot? How indeed. It was a fun experience and I can't wait to tell you guys about it. Let me just kind of move forward here. So my name is Dany Spencer. I'm the Director of Digital Learning Experiences at IHHP. IHHP stands for the Institute for Health and Human Potential. I've been in the learning and development field for, age myself now, for almost 25 years. And one of the things I love to do that I love about being in this field is that I just kind of get to be a chameleon. I get to change who I am on a day-to-day basis based on who I'm writing training for. So as it says in my bio here, one day I could be a salesperson, another day I can be a nurse practitioner, but most of all, I'm just trying to be a better human. So we're helping other people be better humans using chatbots. So that's what I'm trying to do. Okay, so how did we get involved with Mobile Coach to develop a chatbot? Well, funny enough, I saw Vince back in 2019 at the ATD Tech Conference in Florida and loved what I saw. And, kind of started thinking about how could we bring in a tool like this or a product like this to help our clients retain the information they learn in our AI program. So IHHP is first and foremost a leadership training organization, and we focus on human skills. The foundation of that being emotional intelligence. So we teach people to be exceptional leaders and develop emotional intelligence skills. Well, EI skills, I should say, are behavior-based, and behavior is only changed when you can practice those skills. So what we were finding was that even though, our training in classroom or live online, or even our asynchronous solutions were good and allowed for group discussion or demonstration, it wasn't enough practice. And so the other thing that we know, and I'm going to try and say this gentleman's name properly, Hermann Ebbinghaus, who was a German psychologist, came up with the forgetting curve. And so what that is throughout his study, he realized that after 1 week of learning new content, we only retain about 10% of it. And so if you're trying to implement emotional intelligence skills, but you can't quite recall the skills that you need in moments of pressure or when you're hijacked or when you're triggered, you're not really putting them into practice. So how can we get folks to practice those skills? And we had tried, other solutions in the past. We had tried asynchronous sustainment courses. We tried email reminders. We do have one-on-one coaching at IHHP, but that is also a costly and timely option. So we were really looking at micro-learning in the form of the chatbot to help us accomplish this. So that's what we were trying to do. We wanted to just put something that was more, an additional form of active learning that was quick, easy, and fun and affordable as well. And so our initial goal in launching our chatbot was to, help our learners recall the skills they learned in their AI program, make it fresh and new. So don't repeat what you did in the classroom. That's not fun. And, by creating new activities, showing different types of videos, getting them to practice the skills in a new way, keep the interactions, fun, casual, yet informative and worthwhile. And I say worthwhile because I don't know about you, but I try not to spend too much time on my phone. So if I'm going to get a text coming in, I want it to be useful for me. So that was really the key, is how can we make interactions so that when people are getting, a text from Coach Chris, they're excited about it.
So Dany, can you just tell us just really briefly describe the demographic of an IHHP workshop participant?
So the majority of our learners are individual contributors or mid-level managers. So those are the folks that we were targeting. When we're talking about VP level executives, those are typically, they wouldn't necessarily want to do something like this if based on our demographics. So those are the folks that we were targeting.
Got it.
Yeah. So before I go ahead and show you what Coach Chris was all about, I want to kind of give you an idea of where my brain went with it, because I had never developed, in all my years of experience, I had never developed for a chatbot before. So it just kind of, my brain needed to shift. And the first thing I did was what I always do, is just kind of create a high level design, which is what I'll show you. I'm showing you here. And that just kind of helped me organize, okay, well, we're going to have, so many weeks, 16 interactions total. What's the title going to be for that week? What are my objectives? And then what are the assets required? And that just kind of helped me work in a better way with the folks at the mobile coach team. I just didn't want them waiting for me for assets. I hate doing that. So, my recommendation is just be prepared, know what you're going to do and how you're going to get there. So that was my first step. And then what I did next, the folks were great. They gave me an Excel spreadsheet, but unless I'm planning a project, I don't think in Excel for designing content. So I just my brain couldn't connect to it at all. So what I ended up doing was creating the experience, so almost like a storyboard of sorts. But I did it in Word with little, simple, bubbles. And that helped me identify how long each text should be, because I was trying to keep them fairly short. It also helped me identify, well, what did we expect participants to type? So, did we want them to put a number, if it was a if, and, or I think what's the other one, Vince, or any statements? What should be the response
Else,
to those?
Yeah.
Else, right.
Else.
So that kind of helped me connect to that. And because I'm such a visual thinker and learner, that's where my brain went.
I think this is a really interesting process that you went through, because yes, we're a technology company. And so we're very focused on the technology of delivering the messages, but to the users, to the learners, they don't care what technology, they're just going to react to what the message says. And so I often tell people that the number one factor of a chatbot and its success is the writing, and so which is a creative process. And so whatever model, if you're a visual person, whatever will help you focus on the quality of the writing, I think is what you should do. And this is great, the way that I love how you put speech bubbles, because then you could put yourself in the shoes of your audience.
Yeah, I mean, when you're designing learning, that's really, you need to be empathetic to what's happening on the other side for them. So it's not about you writing the training, it's about the person that you're delivering to. So thank you for recognizing that. And that's kind of where my brain was going as well. You can actually see on the left-hand side, that's the exact script that we had started in the Excel spreadsheet that was transferred over. So just to kind of give you a visual of what that kind of look like. And I'm sure what your team did is take everything that I had written in my speech bubbles and put it back in they probably hated me at the time, but probably not. They're so kind. But I wanted to also kind of show you additional screenshots. And one other thing that I kept doing was adding, well, on the top, on the left-hand side of the screen, you might see that it says video, it's about the nail. So I kind of needed to add, like, where did I want those videos to appear? Also below that is kind of the learning objectives. For me, I don't know about any other designers or writers out there, but if I'm kind of writing to something, sometimes I forget what the objectives are. And that's really what you're writing to. You're writing to the learning objective. And so it just really helped me kind of tie back to that when I was going through it. The other piece that I wanted to mention was I tried really hard not to have more than 3 text bubbles before I asked the learners to input something. So to be interactive with the chatbot. It didn't always work that way based on the amount of content that I had, which is another learning we'll talk about. But for the most part, I found it was useful. So try and keep the interaction small and make sure that, your learners are doing something frequently so that it's just not coming to them, but they are interacting with the bot as much as possible. Okay. And then the final, I guess, learning for me in the writing process was don't let your imagination, what you don't know about the mobile coach features and capabilities limit your imagination. And that's what I did. At first, I remember speaking to the team. I'm like, well, can it do this? Can it do that? And they were telling me, don't worry about it. Just write to, what you want the experience to be, and we'll make it happen. And even though they told me that, I still kind of let it limit me a little bit. Because of course, though I'm a designer and a writer, I think in a technical way. So I kept thinking, well, can it do this? Like how many, can we have them kind of input comments and, then it can provide like feedback based on what they wrote. So anyway, I guess the point is don't let that impact how creative you get. Let the experts at Mobile Coach tell you if, it's not possible or if it's not going to yield the result that you wanted. And so
that's a great point. And I remember that conversation. We often challenge people who are designing chatbots. We almost dare them to, just think of something that the chatbot platform can't do. And very rarely do people come up with something, because that's what the platform's built for, is to anticipate. I'm not suggesting people go deliberately look for something impossible, but if you really are, I love what you say, Dany, about being empathetic to the learner. So if you're really being empathetic to the learner and imagining the optimal user experience, chances are the platform will be able to accommodate it.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of platforms out there, if you're looking at, your typical like Articulate, which a lot of us designers are used to working to, you're working towards them doing an input and then having a pre-imagined, response. You're almost having to think, well, they're going to say this, so we give them this option. And this is very different. You're getting them to be open, and so, yeah, I'm not sure how else to best describe it, Vince, other than don't let it impact you at all. Go nuts, and then let you wonderful folks let us know if we're completely off the rails.
Great advice.
with our creative thinking. And so with that said, little drum roll from this little guy who's adorable. I just put him in there because he's so cute. We developed Coach Chris. And so we decided to go, like I said, with a longer experience. It was 8 weeks in total. And folks will get 2 interactions Tuesdays and Thursdays per week. And so at the end of a program, we would encourage them to opt in right away. And then their first interaction would start the following Tuesday post opt-in. And so interactions would be a mixture of methods, such as quizzes were one of them. So just to kind of help them, recall what they learned. The other piece was homework. So just kind of practicing a specific skill that we had taught them. We would also, like I mentioned earlier, videos. So we would have videos for them to kind of see, just help them kind of connect with the skill. As I said, EI is behavior-based. So if you can see somebody, even in a funny video, doing it poorly, it might help you relate to that. And then quick downloads. So things to have on your phone to recall, and then tips and tricks. So those were really kind of the 5 main types of interactions we would have, other than talking about the content that they learned. All right. Next, lessons learned. And there's a few, which is great. You test and learn, test and learn. So I'd say first and foremost, don't be like Dany. Don't start big, start small. I tend to write a Bible. Folks that work with me will tell you I'm very detailed. And so I tend to make things probably a little bit more complicated than they need to be, and longer than they needed to be. So I would say just start small. I probably would have focused on one emotional intelligence competency instead of the entire skills that we cover in the program. And I would say, and I know I mentioned this before, just have fun with it. Don't be too serious. That's boring, especially for me, and hopefully for other users. And then one of the key things that we learned, because as much as I love the chatbot, our team did not connect to it internally. And so, we didn't connect to it in the sense that they didn't really understand what it was, and they couldn't explain it to our clients. And so when we launched it, we encouraged our team to go through it, but we didn't actually, quote unquote, make them do it. So I would probably make it mandatory, have everybody go through it internally that has to have any exposure to it, either sell it, market it, support it, just so they understand what it is, how it works, and they can connect to it emotionally as well. And then ask for open feedback throughout. So not just from your internal team, but what I found was, even going through some of the folks that were going through ours, there wasn't a lot of feedback. And I don't know if it's just the questions that we asked, or if it was just the frequency of the feedback, or perhaps the fact that the feedback was in the tool. I don't know. So those are things that I'd like to explore. Perhaps, how do we get more open feedback throughout so that we can iterate a bit more often? So the more people that go through it, the better. And, I would even put aside some budget to have, a bunch of beta testers go through it, which is something that we actually didn't do. We created it, we loved it, and we launched it, but we actually didn't do a lot of testing in terms of how it landed on people. And so, which is why now we're looking at a next phase of having it be a shorter experience, and hopefully launching it probably a little better next time for the next iteration of it. And that's it.
Well, that's great. That's Coach Chris. Dany, I want to ask about your comment for lessons learned about focusing on maybe one module versus the whole thing. What can you tell us just a little bit more about why that would be, or what's the thinking behind that?
Well, when it comes to the content that we're talking about here, which is emotional intelligence, really the foundation of it is self-awareness. And so, when you're learning those skills, the key thing that you have to learn is, how are you triggered? How do you respond to those triggers? And how, in terms of your default behaviors, which then I think I kind of ran them through the bot a little bit too quickly on that. So I probably would spend a bit more time on one competency, so self-awareness. And then once I've, kind of working through different activities, which is the next iteration of it, is then once they feel that they have, enough competency to move on to the next module, which would be emotional management. So how do you manage those triggers? And then once we can develop a bit more activities and learning around that, then, or practice, I should say, around those competencies, then, emotional connection would have been the next one. So how do you get a little deeper in that competency? And then when I was thinking about it, especially as I was putting together this slide deck for the presentation today, I was like, well, what would that look like? And I know what, we talk about micro learning as a great way for folks to kind of get in the moment practice, but I'd love to look at the opportunity, and I'm going to throw out an idea here, Vince, and you can tell me no, that is not doable or not, or we can have a conversation later. But one of the things I love is kind of creating a menu of learning for, like folks go on YouTube if they want to learn how to, I don't know, my daughter's learning how to do crocheting right now. She learned it from YouTube. So in the moment, she knew that's where she wanted to go. So how can we create a menu of learning for our learners that they can just kind of pick and choose and decide, well, I want to learn more about what are my default behaviors. So what are the skills that I need to input to do that? Okay, that's great. Once I know how to do that, then I want to learn more how to manage my emotions, and I want to learn how to value other people in a proper way. So how can we develop essentially a menu that they can pick from and then make it more customized to them? That would be more pertinent, instead of guiding them through an entire learning experience that, yeah, they may connect to one or two of those skills that they really didn't get to practice much in the program or they want to expand on. But how do we get them to truly make the learning their own?
And that's what actually I was thinking, because I could imagine you creating deeper interactions for a particular competency. Maybe that competency lasts 4 weeks or something like that. And then you allow your participants to choose which competency they want to work on. And I also think that could be really interesting feedback for you and your clients to see, what are our people choosing? What are they choosing to work on? So I love that idea for sure. I think that that's something worth pursuing.
Yeah. And I think it would help for opt-out rates as well. Like, as they go further, because especially have a long experience of 8 weeks, I've gone through the bot myself a few times, and you forget you've opted into this option after a few weeks. So that's why I think maybe a shorter learning experience, perhaps a bit more beefy, around the skills, and just really truly focus on practicing key skills instead of just kind of running through the content as fast as you can because you've got 8 weeks. Yeah. Let's just really focus on the output. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you, Dany, and thank you for all of you for tuning in. If you've got questions or suggestions, or if you want to learn more about emotional intelligence, like who doesn't need more of that, please reach out to Dany and the great folks at IHHP. So thanks. Thank you, Dany, for showing us about Coach Chris. I loved it.
Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.
Great. All right. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.